Quote, "You're awake right now, you're not dead, and you haven't gone to hell," unquote. Said Rachel Maddow, former host on CNN following the 2016 election. Ladies and gentlemen, people are angry about politics. Donald Trump had similar words following the 2020 election. Quote, "We're not going to have a country anymore." Late night host Jimmy Kimmel cried on stage following the 2024 election. "It was a terrible night for women, for children, for democracy and decency." Unquote. Here, Rachel Maddow, Donald Trump, and Jimmy Kimmel made sensational claims. But they didn't make these claims in order to solve a problem. Instead, they wanted drama, and they achieved it by displaying shock and anger to the cameras. This is called false outrage. Even though false outrage is designed for the cameras, it influences others. Actually, it doesn't just influence them, it infects them. False outrage is a disease. To cure this disease, we must decide that outrage is not the solution to complex problems. Today, we'll start by diagnosing this disease in our culture, move on to its symptoms, and conclude with the cure. If our culture could walk into a doctor's office, it would come away with a severe diagnosis of false outrage. So, what's the difference between true and false outrage? No, true outrage seeks what is good. It only wants to achieve what is right. False outrage wants to be seen. A perfect example of false outrage comes in George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984, where the communist regime mandates a daily practice known as the 2 minutes of hate. Every day, the citizens of the regime gather in front of their TVs and scream in outrage as images of their capitalist oppressors flicker by. They don't achieve anything. They're only angry. They only perform. False outrage is all over the internet today. You could say the online world has about as much self-control as a nuclear explosion. An article in Science magazine by Killian McLaughlin demonstrates this, where she found that, quote, social media posts that express outrage are liked and shared more, training users to amplify it, and training users to express more outrage, and ranking algorithms to amplify it, unquote. For example, Benny Johnson, a conservative podcaster, uses false outrage to attract views. Nearly all of his videos feature AI-generated images of screaming, angry politicians. One of his recent videos, for example, features an image of Donald Trump in Eskimo clothing, screaming, along with Vladimir Putin. This doesn't make any sense, but Benny Johnson has 15 million followers. Unfortunately, false outrage doesn't just stay online. It spreads into the real world. As the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression points out, quote, this year, 68% of college students said that shouting down a speech is at least rarely acceptable, unquote. 68% is a record high. More students than ever before now believe in using outrage to silence conversations. We see this we see this personally. This happens all around us. 3 years ago, my grandparents and I went to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. After the march ended, I decided to keep my poster as a souvenir. A woman saw me carrying my poster and started screaming at me, telling me I should never have participated in the march. She believed yelling at 14-year-olds about politics makes you a good person. Online and in person, our culture has embraced outrage. So now that we've diagnosed our culture with outrage, let's talk about the symptoms, the actual effects of false outrage. False outrage causes us to have angry conversations and to believe that our anger makes us good people. As writers for The Minimalist, a blog that encourages simple living, pointed out, quote, we've all gotten offended and used our fake outrage to cast judgment upon others. We do this because it helps us feel better. Unquote. When we pretend to be outraged, we don't have to reason through our beliefs. Piers Morgan, the British host of a political show with 4 million followers, uses false outrage to avoid hard questions. In a 2017 interview when a guest questioned his stance on gun policy, Piers responded, quote, "How dare you?" Unquote. When his guest responded, "Well, Piers, you can keep saying that, but my point still stands," Piers Morgan didn't address his point. "Again, how dare you?" Piers responded. Nothing Piers Morgan said advanced the debate. Instead, he used outrage to shield himself, because outrage is easier than analysis. False outrage is like hiding under the bed in hide and seek. It'll hide you well, but it's a terrible place to be. Performative outrage is a terrible place to be. I saw this personally as I sat in the audience at a committee hearing in the U.S. House of Representatives. Several experts testified about developments in nuclear power technology. One congresswoman decided to make an example out of them. She was angry about nuclear contamination in her district, so she decided to yell at them. Quote, "Let me finish my sentence," she demanded, saying 10 more sentences as the committee chairman told her she was out of order. Eventually, she stormed out of the room. Because of her anger, she missed out on an opportunity to learn about nuclear power. She wasn't angry for no reason, though. She believed that grandstanding against nuclear power made her a good person. Psychologist Joshua Grubbs, in a 2019 study, found that public figures express outrage so that their audience applauds them, in what he calls moral grandstanding. When public figures condemn some far-off event, they receive praise for their bravery and courage. Stephen Colbert, another late-night host, has done exactly that. After Donald Trump held a rally at Madison Square Garden in New York City, Colbert said on his show, quote, "I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but in 1939 they held a pro-Nazi rally there," unquote. With this remark, Colbert insinuated that Trump is Nazi adjacent. Having created a straw man out of Trump, an evil Nazi, Colbert spared no words, swearing at Trump live on national television. His statements make sense because his worldview treats false outrage as virtuous. Author Glenn Beck describes the human effect of this in his book, Addicted to Outrage. Quote, "It deprives human beings of genuine humanity, replacing instead with an outwardly facing caricature of a virtuous human being wrapped around a rotting corpse." Unquote. This twisted worldview has morality backwards. False outrage replaces good deeds with outraged words. The culture celebrates false outrage. Politicians and media figures promote it. They don't deserve all the blame, but their worldview does deserve the blame. Their worldview is false. Fake outrage is not a virtue. Moral grandstanding is not a good deed. This moral confusion has eroded the genuine compassion of millions and transformed it into outrage. But I wouldn't have accomplished anything if I told you to be outraged at false outrage. That would be a terrible cure to this sickness. I used to be addicted to outrage. I was angry at every news story. I debated every little detail. Thankfully, I was convicted after reading Glenn Beck's book, Addicted to Outrage. I realized what I had been doing. Colossians 3 verse 2 says, quote, "Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things," unquote. I made a pledge to stop being outraged at earthly things. Imagine if everyone stopped being outraged at earthly things. If everyone stopped being so angry. If we calmly discussed difficult questions and stopped believing that our outrage makes us good people. That's the world I want to live in. And that world is only possible if you help build it. To take a quote from Darth Vader completely out of context, quote, "With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy," unquote. You won't improve the world by being angry. You make the world a better place if you have calm conversations, actually do good deeds, and focus on something higher than the next controversy. False outrage isn't worth it. Life is too beautiful to waste being angry.